mentioned, I'm Hannah. I work at Lloyds Banking Group, and I myself has recently rolled off a graduate scheme and taken my first step in a new career in the realm of leadership development. So thank you all so much for joining us today. I can't wait to introduce you to our fantastic set of panelists and take you on what I would describe as a journey of enlightenment in non-visible differences. At least that's been my experience of getting to know these wonderful people over the last few weeks. So as I'm sure you've maybe experienced or are experiencing, starting a career can be a really exciting time. Life's full of possibilities and opportunities. Maybe you've moved to a new place to start a role. Maybe you're experiencing independent living for the first time, or maybe you're just working in an area you've started in a role that you're really interested in and you've been working towards for a long time, and that is a massive achievement. But that transition can also come with its challenges as we get to grips with living in new places, meeting professional expectations, and settling into the workplace. And for some young professionals, this transition can be even more complex when they're additionally managing non-visible differences, such as neurodivergence or being LGBTQ+, for example. And a report by the World Health Organization found that an estimated 1.6 billion people, or 16% of the world's population, live with a significant disability, whilst approximately 80% of people experience non-visible differences. And of course, that's not a perfect number because it is influenced by diagnosis rates. So it could be much higher than that. So really, when I talk about some young people experiencing that additional layer of challenge, really I mean quite a lot of people. And whilst those differences themselves may have an impact in their own right on us as we navigate that in the context of work, it can also make it harder for people to access support due to the fact that it's not obvious and it can come with stigma. So approximately 64% of people who are neurodivergent stated that they haven't disclosed it due to a fear of discrimination. So that's a really real issue. And when you factor in natural feelings of imposter thoughts that could affect anyone, feeling different to those around us can add an additional layer of challenge. And 12% of people who are neurodivergent have reported that when they did access support, they didn't feel that it was tailored to their personal needs, which paints a really concerning picture. So we spend so much time at work feeling safe to be ourselves, and feeling empowered to do our best work is a key part of looking after our well-being. So for any of you who haven't joined us before, Thriving from the Start is a free mental health network for young professionals, which is overseen by the MindForward Alliance. And we're all about empowering and educating young people to help them thrive in their careers. And so today we'll be hearing from young professionals who are neurodivergent and also LGBTQ+ about their early careers experience, giving you an opportunity to learn from real life and to get expert advice about feeling different or othered in the workplace. So we hope that you leave feeling empowered to navigate your future career with more knowledge to support yourself and potentially those around you as well. Wellbeing isn't just a nice to have, it's a vital part of having a long-term, successful and sustainable career. So without any further ado, I will introduce you to our panelists. So tell us a little bit about who you are and where you're joining us from today. We'll go to Jen first.
Hi, everyone. Firstly, what a great intro from Hannah. Really appreciate it. And thanks again as well to the MindForward Alliance and from Thriving to the Start, such great organizations. And I'm so excited to be here today talking to you. My name is Jen Kingsmill. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm an associate at a law firm called Silkin, specializing in employment law and in particular giving advice on neurodiversity, disability, long-term ill health, and also LGBT. I myself am also neurodivergent. I have dyslexia diagnosed. And I think the more that you talk to me, the more you'll be like, there's some ADHD kind of flitting around there as well. I'm also LGBT. I identify as omnisexual and my spouse is bigendered. So I think that's probably a nice quick overview that we'll get into all the details as we go. Thanks very much, Hannah. I'll pass back to you.
Yep, thank you. And then next we'll go to Dhyasa.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm so excited for this conversation. I just think it's just going to be fantastic. I love being part of spaces where I can pick things up from other people, and this is definitely one of those. I'm Dhyasa Morgan. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a bisexual South Asian woman who has endometriosis and ADHD. Bit of a mouthful. I don't always introduce myself that way. But I joined Capgemini 2.5 years ago now, and I am an operations lead working in service delivery. I got my diagnosis early on in my career, so I'm excited to talk to you all about that today.
Thank you. And last but not least, we have Phil joining us as well.
Hi, Hannah. Thanks very much. Just so that you know, I've got a pussycat in front of me as well that keeps popping up. So my apologies. Keep throwing them out. It keeps coming back in here. Phil Canale. I work at MindForward Alliance. I'm the head of workplace wellbeing, and I am delighted to be here today. My pronouns are he, him. My visible description is white man, glasses, salt and pepper beard, more salt and pepper short, salt and pepper hair, and black shirt. So a little bit about me. I spent 35 years in financial services, 21 of those, the last 21 years at BNY, always working in the business, but had a real passion for wellbeing and mental health in the workplace, and was lucky enough to chair and lead or co-lead our global network at BNY when I was there for the last 3 years, called Heart. And now I've changed career completely, and I'm doing something utterly different. I'm working for MindForward Alliance, and really excited to hear the stories of Jen and Dhyasa today and contribute to the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. And so, talking of stories, we'll jump straight in with you, Jen. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience of your early careers journey and what it was like navigating the workplace as someone with a difference?
Of course. So I think it's interesting because part of this is also, I think, to do with my sort of social mobile background as well. I came from, didn't know anybody who worked in law, didn't know anything like that. My mum was the worker in our house, and she was also a carer for my dad. And I remember when I was sort of like studying at university, I was sort of like, well, no one's going to want to hire me. Like, I'm LGBT. At the end of university, I found out that I was dyspraxic. Um, and the fact that I'm sort of like bisexual and dyspraxic means that, as you'll note from this, I can barely sit on a chair right. So I was like, how am I gonna be able to sort of enter the workforce and all of that. So from my side of things, while I was at university, I then tried to work to get as much work experience as possible while I was at uni, because I sort of thought to myself, well, that way I'll actually have something that people will want to sort of employ and hire, rather than sort of like having faith in myself for who I was. And so it meant that during my university, I worked, which obviously put strains on my studies as well as that. I also sort of had mental health issues while I was sort of going through that too. And then after university, instead of like a lot of people who are entering law who apply for their training contracts in their second year of university or even their third year of university, I thought, again, still, no one's going to want to employ me. So I paralegaled for a few years before even trying to apply. I think that that was the right choice for me because it helped me be really strong in knowing like this is the career path I want to go into. But at the same time, like by the time that I was ready to apply for a training contract or ready, whatever that means, I wanted to get going straight away. But as a lot of people might know, you have to normally wait 2 years before you can sort of start your training contract. And I felt like in retrospect, looking at sort of other people who are in my position, I feel like they would have just applied before they were maybe in their head ready. So that in those 2 years' time, they suddenly would have been ready. But due to kind of feeling insecure in myself and insecure in sort of my own offering, I sort of put off applying because I just thought, well, I just don't see that people are going to want to buy into this. And I think it's quite interesting because I was really lucky that when I did apply for a training contract, I actually got offered the first one I applied for. And so I think it shows how this you can sort of have all of this imposter syndrome in your head and feel quite insecure about things, but then actually, the proof is in the pudding that that we all have our own sort of special things to offer and things like that, and it's easy to kind of doubt yourself when you don't need to. So that's kind of like the early careers journey with some of the things that were sort of going on. I hope that kind of helps.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's definitely, I think journey is the right word, isn't it, for the various obstacles and challenges that you had to navigate through that process. And you mentioned there around both the imposter thoughts that you experienced and more broadly around the impacts it had on your mental health. So could you tell us a little bit more around or about what sorts of techniques or things or support you utilize to help you manage those impacts?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think it's really easy, especially when you kind of are not confident in yourself, and especially when you're sort of neurodivergent. And again, you sort of think, well, is this my own narrative? Do other people think and feel the way that I'm thinking and feeling? To kind of get stuck in a kind of like mind loop echo chamber. And actually, like the best things that you can do, or at least what I found really helped, was sort of like reaching out and talking to people. Like the more that I like have spoken to my managers, like especially at the law firm that I'm at now, Silkin, like whenever I have one of those kind of imposter syndrome crazy thoughts, I'll suddenly reach out to my manager and go, just out of interest, are you planning to fire me anytime soon? Like, is there any like feedback that you're just holding back from me so that you can just like exit me? And then they're sort of like, Jen, do you, this sentence really helped me actually. They said, do you really think that we're that bad managers that if we thought that you had a problem that we wouldn't tell you and try and work with you on it, and that you'd still be able to do all of this client work and things like that? And I think sort of externalizing that issue and realizing that, you know, it's not just everything that's going on in my head, like everybody else has their own responsibilities as well. And when you're in a good team, you know, you should be being managed properly. People are going to be working with you and all of that kind of thing. I also think from a sort of practical things that could quite help was with my neurodivergence, I sort of applied for access to work, and my firm helped me put in reasonable adjustments in place so that I got support at work. So I've got sort of a sit-down desk. I'm not here right now. I'm in a WeWork space, but I have a sit-down desk at home. I also had sort of coaching from neurodiversity coaching and mentoring and things like that, which all really helped and sort of brought me all together. And I think developing your community means so much. One of the things that I do quite a lot is sort of attend like network events that are for the LGBT group that I'm part of, as well as part of the neurodiversity side of things as well. And I think the amazing thing is like spending more and more time with your community, the more you kind of feel validated and sort of appreciate how like you're not alone and there's more people that you can talk to and work on those kind of next steps. I've actually sort of taken it on myself that I am, you know, the deputy chair of our internal LGBT network. I sort of talk at quite a lot of events like this and things like that as well regarding neurodiversity. And I've also made the sort of my specialisms at work, like I mentioned earlier, regarding neurodiversity and LGBT, because it's something that the more I sort of learn about, the more I hyperfixate on, and the more that I'm sort of like, oh, this is something that I really feel like I can bring some value to. So I think sort of appreciating your own strengths, but also kind of building your community and realizing what will help you sort of will help empower people to sort of move forward.
And that's really a really honourable way, I think, of helping yourself, but also kind of paying that forward, I suppose, and supporting others as well. Thank you. That's some fascinating insights, and we'll come back to you later to come back to some more of the kind of practical side of things. If we move on to you, Dhyasa, you've had a slightly not different experience. Obviously, we'll all have slightly unique personal experiences of going through the process of diagnosis, assessment, experiencing a non-visible difference. But you mentioned in your sort of intro side of things that it was early in your career, or as you were starting your career, that you went through that process. So can you tell us a little bit more about your experience of going through the recruitment process and those first few years of your career?
Absolutely. So I was diagnosed with endometriosis in, I think, my second year of uni, which was very validating. And then in my final year of university, I took on the role of being the BAME officer at the Sheffield Students' Union. I think it's called the Diversity Officer now. I was also studying law. I was in my third year, and I came to the realization that I didn't want to do that anymore. And so lots of things were going on in my head. And all of my coping mechanisms for doing well at school and ticking the boxes and getting things done and motivating myself just weren't working anymore. I spoke to the disability support service at my university, and they said, well, have you ever thought that you might have ADHD? There were so many miscommunications and misconceptions that I had about what that looked like. And so almost coming to terms with something that might exist within me that's always been there that I just didn't know what it was called, was part of that journey. And I was actually looking at job roles whilst I was seeking a diagnosis. I only got diagnosed in my first year of my career. And that was extremely validating, but it did mean I was able to put a name to something, which really, really helped. Something I did that I think in retrospect, I'm so glad that I did it, but it frightened me at the time. I did disclose during my recruitment process that I was seeking a diagnosis for ADHD, and that I had been diagnosed with endometriosis, just because I think something that I realized about myself is I can't really play it small. I'm not good at it. I'm a massive personality, and all parts of myself, I bring all parts of myself to every role that I sit in. And because we spend so much time at work, I wanted to make sure I could be my most authentic self at work. So we have various managers in Capgemini. People managers are the ones you sit quite closely to. I disclosed it to my people manager, and they asked whether I was comfortable sharing it. And they put me in contact with some networks as well. And it was kind of a win after a win, considering the fact that I was just absolutely honest about myself and with with everyone that works closely to me. I'm very fortunate in, how it's been received, and the support that I've received as well. And similarly to you, Jen, being part of networks that show you have a community and you have shared experiences. I'm currently a co-lead of the community and collaboration workstream as part of our race equality network at Capgemini. But we've done events with Neuroability, which is one of our newer networks, and also Outfront, which is our LGBTQ plus network. And kind of sitting on the intersection of all of those and understanding that, even though your differences aren't the same differences, there's still shared ground, and you can build community that way as well. And it's just been absolutely fantastic.
And that's brilliant to hear, and already starting to see those themes emerging and across the both of you there, and some of the things which have really helped you leverage and lean into and kind of make the most of I suppose that the differences, but it's a superpower rather than something that's holding you back, which is brilliant to hear. And I was going to say, I saw as you were talking there that got some comments coming through about others really relating to what you're saying as well. So it's resonating. Although as we've mentioned, we might all experience this slightly differently. There's a commonality as well there. Okay, so I suppose that you've told us a lot already about some of the things that you did to help you navigate that. Were there ever times where you did experience imposter thoughts?
Oh gosh, all the time. I think imposter thoughts inherently, I think they're quite integral to how I work, and not a bad way. They do come up, and you have to grapple with that quite often. Feeling like an outsider, or feeling like I've somehow tricked people into thinking I'm good at my job. And honestly, if I've somehow managed to trick that many people, then I might actually be good at it. I think I've realized as well on what you mentioned earlier, Jen, about feeling ready. Those imposter thoughts creep in, especially during times like that, when you think, well, what have I done that would equip me to do that? And I compare it a lot to my journey learning to drive. I don't think being ready is real at all. It's a bit like, you learn everything that gets you on the road and gets you past your test, and you do all that. You can tick the box, but a lot of that comes with actually putting yourself out there and doing it. And I combat imposter thoughts daily, but mostly by showing up. And I think that's half the battle won. Because you have to prove to yourself that you can be there and you can do it, and you will meet the challenge, because you've gotten this far with a difference that people can't see, that you haven't understood completely yourself, and that's difficult enough. So of course you can do this. Of course you can send that email to the executive. Of course it seems like the smallest little things can set it off, but absolutely it's one of those things that I think you have to let yourself meet yourself halfway. Give that grace.
Yeah, it's a really nice way of looking at it, in that it's okay to have those thoughts. It's normal to experience those thoughts. It's how you respond to that and the power that you let those thoughts hold over you versus the power that you have to say, actually, and you mentioned this as well, Jen, is the thinking about things from different perspectives, thinking about it potentially from someone else's perspective to loosen the power that they have over you. Thank you. And thank you for your honesty and your vulnerability there as well. So I'd like to ask you one final question before we move on to Phil, which is based on your experience, and you started touching on it there, what would you say is your advice to other young professionals who may be starting out in their careers and navigating that transition themselves?
I think my big thing to mention, and this is a learning point even for myself, is that your well-being and your ability to be yourself is foundational to your success. It's not a tack on, it's not an add-on. It's something that will really ensure that you have those roots to grow. If you're not comfortable being yourself and showing up as yourself, there's only, so much that you can do for people. And ultimately, you're working with people. Be yourself. And it's okay to be different, and it's okay to feel like you're being an inconvenience. You're not. But ask. People can't help unless you ask as well. And I'm definitely learning that.
Thank you. That's brilliant. Really, really empowering on us as individuals to equally own our authenticity. Thank you. So, Phil, coming round to yourself then, what are your reflections from what we've heard from Jen and Dhyasa there?
Crikey, where do I start? I've been scribbling notes as we've been going along. I think the first observation is that I too did a law degree. So that's a full house in the panel. We didn't know that, by the way. And like Dhyasa in my third year, realised it probably wasn't the future for me. And that was the start of my journey of pivoting and changing and moving into new challenges that weren't in my comfort zone. But I just want to think back on some of the things that we've heard from Jen and Dhyasa. Jen, you said it's easy to doubt yourself when you don't need to. And Dhyasa, you said your well-being is your priority. I think those are two really key and important things to hold on to. You own that, and I would, encourage you to maintain that ownership. Jen, you said reach out and speak to people, speak to your manager, and then you both spoke about imposter thoughts. Well, the good news is that imposter thoughts are perfectly natural. We all experience them. The not so good news is that they don't really go away. And I can speak from recent experience, having in my mid-50s decided that 35 years of banking was enough for me, and I was going to go and work for a mental health organisation. And I would classify myself as a keen amateur. Maybe that's undercutting it a little bit, but it's never been my day job. And yet here I am, surrounded by these amazing people who are so knowledgeable in this world. And so I just find myself constantly saying, what are my strengths? What can I bring to the team? And what do I need to learn, and be humble about it and try and figure out where I need to be better? So if you're ever experiencing imposter thoughts, take yourself back to what are you good at, because you are good at stuff. And this is, you're all early careers people. You are going to test the water with different jobs. Hannah, you've just started a new rotation. You may start another one, and similarly. And that's new challenges for you. It's going to be perfectly natural to be worried and think at the start, why am I good enough to do this? And somebody said to me once, a few years ago, when I went from a learning role into a CAO role, how's it going? And I said, I feel like I'm winging it. And about 6 months later, they said, how's it going? I said, I'm still winging it, but I'm winging it with confidence now. And I think that's, you just build confidence in time. So my encouragement would be around imposter thoughts, just they are natural, but speak to people. We heard some really good advice from Jen again, speak to your manager. And also networks, the power of networks. And I think we're probably going to talk a little bit about, what other things are there that people can look to support them. So maybe there's just some of my thoughts from what I've heard from Jen and Dhyasa. And the final thing I would say is thank you to all of you for sharing such personal stories.
Oh, thank you. Echoing my sentiments entirely. Yeah. So Jen, if we swing back round to yourself, obviously as you've mentioned, you're in a very knowledgeable place as well to share some advice and your thoughts around any information that young professionals should be aware of in terms of employment law, specifically in relation to differences such as neurodiversity? Is there anything that you can share with us?
Thank you so much. I've got to say, I'm already feeling very empowered listening to everybody else speak as well. So it's been already a great session for me, I must say. Thanks as well for, like I say, it is sort of one of my specialities is sort of neurodiversity and things like that. And I think it's worth keeping in mind. I think some of the ways to feel empowered, especially when you're sort of neurodiverse, is to sort of hive information and think, well, how can I put myself in the strongest position possibly and hyperfixate on that? And I think some of the ways to do that is to know your rights. And so I just sort of thought it might be a good chance to just give you a very brief overview of sort of what your rights might be in the space. It's worth noting that neurodiversity can amount to a disability under the Equality Act. And you do not need to have a diagnosis for neurodiversity to have rights for it to amount to a disability. If it does amount to a disability, then your employer has to put in reasonable adjustments in place to help you. The reasonable adjustments are supposed to fit for yourself and to help things easier for you and your role. So it's about making sure those two things together to help mitigate any kind of difficulties that you might be having. And I think being aware of that and being sort of empowered to be able to sort of talk to your managers, know that you can sort of get these things and support where you need them. And I would say that the majority of businesses are really keen because at the end of the day, it costs a lot of money to recruit. And when they found people that they want to keep in the business, they want to make sure that you're thriving and in the best position possible, not that you're sort of struggling without getting the help and assistance that you'll need. Additionally, a lot of adjustments that can be put in place don't actually either cost very much from the business or don't cost anything at all. Sort of having like a mentor or a coach, that doesn't cost anything if there's somebody who already works in the business. A lot of IT software that you might have, there's probably already licenses at the business that you're working in that they can just sort of provide to you. Additionally, sort of using things like AI, Grammarly, all of that, I've personally found really, really helpful as well. Another thing to be aware of is something called Access to Work. I can't remember because ADHD brain, if I mentioned it earlier, but basically Access to Work is a government scheme that you can apply for. You apply as an individual, but it links to your work. And then when you sort of get through, there are sort of waiting times, as there is with anything that's a government system, unfortunately. And they will sort of be able to give you funding and give your work funding towards a sort of support place, things that you might have in place. Through that, I've sort of got quite a lot of help and stuff like that. And it's also you can get reassessed again. I even know some people who've had money put towards sort of commuting because they find commuting really stressful due to their neurodiversity. That people who found sort of fancy headphones, all of that kind of thing, all of the stuff that if your company doesn't have sort of the funds to be able to put an adjustment in place, it can help sort of provide some of the funds for your company to be able to support in doing that. So again, I think Access to Work is a really good thing. And as an individual, if you apply, then it can, even if you move jobs, Access to Work can move with you into your next jobs as well. So I think it's a little tidbit that a lot of people aren't actually aware of. But for me, it really helped me. And I think it helps a lot of businesses as well. So if anybody has any questions or anything like that, or I just wanted to say if anyone wants to connect afterwards, I'm going to put my LinkedIn in the sort of webinar chat, and do feel free to reach out to me. I'm sure that everybody here would also feel the same as well.
That's brilliant. Thank you. And it's helpful to hear about such a range of different support that's available. So on that note, Phil, I wanted to come back round to yourself. I suppose from a resources perspective, is there anything that you would build on that are the people watching could use or be aware of supporting themselves?
Yeah, sure. First of all, I'll echo Jen's point. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. More than happy to help. And also, Jen gave a pretty comprehensive list of a lot of things that are already out there. We've talked about flexible working arrangements, assistive technology, things like screen readers. You can get speech-to-text software, that kind of thing. You can get ergonomic equipment like mouse and keyboards and such like. Some organisations are investing in quiet spaces, sensory-friendly spaces. I'll come back to resource groups in a moment. And then you can look at modified job responsibilities. So speak to your manager about, the working hours that you do. When are you most productive? I've got colleagues that find them much more productive early in the morning and therefore will start early, finish early. Some people are just slow in the morning, and it's vice versa. I did mention resource groups. And in fact, both Jen and Dhyasa talked about resource groups. They're one of the most powerful informal networks that you can get involved in. And if you're not, I would encourage you to. As I said earlier on, I co-led BNY's disability network for 3 years. But the reason why I say that is that they are the voice of employees in organizations. They are a really powerful group that can influence policy. They can influence change in the organization. And sorry, the pussycat's back again. And they can really be a power for good and change. And in addition to just the networks, the informality within those, for example, chat groups were developed around neurodiversity, around caring for children who were either disabled or neurodivergent, caring for parents who were perhaps struggling in older age. So definitely networks. Employee assistance programs, a lot of organizations offer that. I've used it in the past, a great way of getting confidential counseling, getting support, getting help, and just advice on a variety of life things that go on. You've got the more formal approach around things like occupational health support and your HR departments. You can go to them, you can talk to them about any needs that you may have. Digital accessible tools. So you've got platforms for collaboration. Jen again mentioned AI, our old friend. But you've got transcripts, you've got captioning, you've got language translation tools. There's just a ton of stuff out there. Confidential disclosure, please don't forget that. That's a really important thing for you if you feel like you can't or don't trust people around you. And that can sometimes be very difficult when you want to share, feels very personal to you. So if you feel like you want to disclose confidentially, there should be routes and access for that. And then the final thing I would say is that outside of your organization, there are plenty of external bodies that you can reach out to and speak to, whether that is Mind or Scope, or there are neurodiversity charities and organizations. And the last thing I think is when Dhyasa said, be yourself, don't afraid to be visible about yourself. Sometimes non-visible differences can be made visible. So if you're not familiar with a sunflower, that's a fantastic way of helping others recognize that you're neurodivergent and actually that they may just need to provide you with a little bit of accommodation themselves and empathy while they're communicating and dealing with you. So just some thoughts.
Just a few. There's lots for hopefully people to be taking away and applying and thinking about what that could mean for them personally. Thank you all so much. Before we go out to our audience for any questions, I wanted to put one last question out to you all, which is, what is the one thing that you would like our attendees, our audience, to remember about managing theirs or others' well-being or non-visible differences? Oh, I suppose I'll go. Jen, do you want to go first?
I think it's about being kind to yourself. At the firm that I'm at, we have like 2 main values, and everything that we do on my work is led by these values, and it's bravery and kindness. And I think that to me is such a great way to kind of look at the world. And sometimes being brave is also about being kind to yourself, thinking, I'm having a really, really hard day today. Today is tough. And like being brave and sort of acknowledging that in yourself and kind that, maybe today I do need to kind of log on a little bit later. Obviously, if that's the case, make sure you talk to your manager, and you get approval for things like that. Sometimes it's, maybe today I want to sort of take a bit of time outside, have a sort of walk around, get outside. Maybe I need to think about, how do I get my energy back? For me personally, as an extrovert, I don't know if it comes across, it's like I'll try and organize to like sort of hang out with friends or do something different, sort of to replenish those stocks. But for other people, it might be sort of organizing a bit of downtime for them, sort of having a coffee and things like that. And I think trying to have like a one step at a time kind of thing. I think it's easy to get overwhelmed when you start thinking, well, I felt like this for days and days and nothing's going to get better. And it's like, well, actually, just having a warm shower this morning, that's a really good thing to do. Okay, now I've done this warm shower, what's the next thing? Okay, even if I don't feel like it, eating is a really helpful thing. I know I often feel better after I've eaten. And just try and have those little things in place can make such a big difference. And I know for me and my neurodivergence, my dyspraxia is much worse when I'm sort of like tired or stressed or overwhelmed. So again, sometimes I just have to be really kind to myself and be like, Yeah, no, I've fallen over twice today. I've dropped my coffee all over myself and the stairs. It's going to be a dyspraxic day, and it's okay to kind of own that and sort of warn that to other people as well. And I think, again, it's in our heads. We go, why, if everything's not perfect, if I'm not firing on all cylinders, then it's not sort of worthwhile. And it's like, well, actually, most people aren't firing on all cylinders every day, and it's okay to have days that are okay. I've realized that I talked for a while then, so sorry.
That's great. That's really helpful. It's a really important way of viewing those challenging days and life more generally. And it is, I think that's something we all benefit from often, is just chunk things down, break it up, one thing at a time, and you get there eventually. But you do what feels right for you. But that comes with that self-awareness, doesn't it? Of knowing what are your limits, what helps you, what doesn't help you. Thank you. So if we come to you next, what would be your key thing to take away?
I think, honestly, I'd mention again the fact that well-being is something that is core, integral, and foundational to your journey. And it's so good to start prioritizing it early on, because it will catch up with you. You will burn out, you will get ill, you'll get tired. And like Jen was saying, be kind to yourself, give yourself that grace. I'm a very all or nothing person. So learning to I'm kind of radicalizing myself with rest. And it's been a big learning journey for me. I was hospitalized with tonsillitis earlier this year, and it shifted so much in my brain. I was like, oh, the world still turns. I just need to rest. And that's how you need to look at it sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. You're both saying similar things, in that you can't go at 150%, 150% of the time. You do have to take that step back to help yourself keep giving, keep going. Thank you. And finally, Phil, is there anything you would add?
Yeah, I'll maybe take a slightly different tack and talk about others rather than ourselves. And 80% of those people with disabilities are dealing with non-visible disabilities. That's a huge statistic. But non-visible differences extends just beyond disability. It extends into our personal lives, whether we're caring for somebody, our sexual orientation, a lot of personal things that people feel hard to disclose. So when we think about those around us, the first thing I would say is be kind and be compassionate. By being kind and compassionate, people feel like they can talk to you and open up to you. That's much easier for you to display a degree of empathy and understanding when people are prepared to share, but they'll only share when they feel it's safe to share. And we all own that responsibility to create that safe space for people to share. So that would probably be my encouragement. Don't read a book by its cover. Allow people the space to share and disclose, but don't be offended if they choose not to.
Thank you. That's a really nice way of thinking about it. There's something for everyone on the call today, whether you're here to think about how you could be an advocate and support the people around you, or whether you're looking for something for yourself as an individual. Thank you. So for the last few minutes, we've got a number of questions which have been coming through. So this first question I'll put to you, both Dhyasa and Jen. I think it would be useful for both to get both of your viewpoints on this. So someone's wondering if you have a view on how your differences have been a strength and helped you in your early career, such as by bringing a perspective that another colleague didn't have, that sort of thing. So if you could maybe, in the interest of time, maybe share one
I'll
thing.
do it quick, I promise. I think what I would say is I sort of found out that I think that has come through as part of my neurodiversity, is that I can kind of have a bit of a kinetic energy about me that people have said, and that sometimes I think I think it makes me a little bit more charismatic. Something that's quite a key thing for neurodivergent people is sometimes their social skills, their ability to read a room, if you're sort of like ADHD in particular, can be really, really strong. And I think that that's one of the reasons why I sort of end up doing talks like this, because actually that neurodivergent trait has like really benefited me, and it's something that I'm really proud of, to be honest.
You should be. I think we've spoken about this before, but you draw people in, and that's really important, especially when you're attending events like this. Thank you. And Dhyasa?
I think it's allowed me to be very welcoming to a variety of people with lots and lots of backgrounds and experiences and differences. And what tends to happen, because I'm so vocal about, my differences and how that works, people are more likely to share. Because I never walk into a room and say I know everything or I'm perfect or things like that, and people connect with that, and I think that's really important, to bring yourself to the table and allow people to connect with that.
Thank you both, really powerful tips there. So the next question I'll direct to you, Phil. So someone has asked, and you can all actually chip in on it, but we'll start with Phil. So somebody has asked, what should you do, or what could you do if your line manager isn't easy to talk to when it comes to seeking support?
Yeah, a difficult one, because your line manager is probably the greatest influence on your job and your career, but not the only person to speak to. Again, I would encourage networks, colleagues and peers, and also human resources. You can always speak to them in a confidential way and try and figure out why there was a breakdown in communication between you and your manager. I've had experiences over the years where that's been difficult, and I found that speaking to other people outside of that relationship and then circling back to that relationship has worked. I had one incident where I spoke to a peer of my manager, and it turned out to be a bit of a miscommunication between me and my manager, and they almost brokered the deal. But not being afraid to step outside of that manager-employee relationship is important.
Thank you. Jen, Dhyasa, I see you both nodding. Was there anything that you wanted to add, or good with that? Perfect. Okay, so the next question, again, we'll come back to, I think we've probably got time to open it up to all three of you. So somebody has asked specifically, I suppose we've focused today on talking about some of the well-being, the impacts of well-being, and that intersectionality between well-being and non-visible differences. Do you specifically have any tips for managing neurodivergence in the workplace? I suppose building on some of what you've mentioned already.
Don't mind starting. Yeah. Managing it in the workplace. If people know about it, they tend to understand a bit better, is my biggest piece of, advice, or, my big takeaway, because I tend to communicate it quite early on in teams. I say, look, I might speak over you in meetings. It's not personal. Sometimes I might have a thought and it blurts out. I can't necessarily control it all the time. Please do let me know. And I will try and step off as soon as. Also pull me back if I'm kind of off the trail. Don't be afraid of doing those things. I think it comes down to knowing yourself quite well and also knowing how you best work. So I tend to flag those things quite early on, and it really helps. I also need a bit of a break midday before lunch, because I start to get into a bit of a zone where I can't do things. And I pop to the gym. I just let all my teams know, communicate with people how best you work, and they'll want to support you to do that.
Before you answer, or anyone else answers actually, I just wanted to jump in with a quick follow-up question, because we have spoken a lot about self-awareness, knowing yourself. Mm-hmm. How have you both developed that self-awareness?
By failing forward. Honestly, it's not like I woke up one day and went, oh my gosh, yeah, I know that this is like, if I don't have lunch at this time, then I won't eat. Like it's because I haven't had lunch at that time for so many days or for so many months, and I've slumped and I've been like, oh my God, what is this? So it's not to bring my actual root cause analysis. Why has that happened? And then you trace it backwards. So it's a lot of failure, but it's not a bad thing. Fail forward into learning about yourself, I think.
That reminds me of, I'm not going to be able to remember it now, but I've seen somewhere recently that FAIL is an acronym, and it's something about basically learning
first attempt in learning.
That's the one. Yeah, thank you. First attempt in learning. I think that's really pertinent here. Thank you. Jen, Phil, was there anything that you were going to build on in terms of those tips for managing neurodivergence at work?
I was just going to say, wow, I think I love that from Dhyasa. Like empowering yourself to own the narrative, I think is so important. And I think when people are aware, especially, I think a great example in terms of, oh, I know sometimes I get excited and interrupt. I don't mean to, call me out on it. It's definitely my fault. I appreciate you can't always do that in every single conversation that you have, just like in every single conversation, you can't come out about your being LGBT in every single conversation. Although sometimes we try. But I also, so in terms of working with your disability, a lot of companies these days have sort of disability passports, and they can sort of follow you around in the teams that you work in, so that they know, oh, all the manager that you're working on in this project knows that this is what's going to help you. You move to another project and the passport follows with you. I think it's worth keeping in mind that the requirement for business to put in reasonable adjustments is a continuing requirement. So it's not that they just put them in and that's the end of it. They should be reviewing them and reviewing them with you at a pace that sort of helps you. So if you put them in place and then a couple of months later you think, oh, actually I think this would help, or maybe this isn't really helping, I want to try something else, then I think just make sure that you try and have a continuous dialogue with HR or your managers and things like that to sort of move that forward. So those would be my top tips.
Thank you. And Phil, is there anything that you would build on there?
No, I think both my fellow panelists from the neurodivergent community, and I think they've said it all. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so that pretty much takes us to time today. That's gone so quickly, and hopefully I promised a journey of enlightenment, and I hope that is how all of our audience are feeling, inspired, empowered, and hopefully with some thoughts and some ideas about what we can be doing differently, or building on. Maybe you're doing some of this already, and actually it's just validating the fact that you're doing the right things, and it's about just continuing on that journey. So thank you, Bill, Dhyasa, Jen, for your insights and for your time today. It's been incredibly valuable. And to all of our audience, thank you for your engagement, for your questions. I hope you've all found it really insightful and interesting, as I have, and I hope to see you around at future events.